Welcome to Vauxhall Bridge. Listen, if somebody tells you not to bother coming to Vauxhall, there's nothing here but just ugly buildings, believe them, it's true. I would not argue with that because I've lived in Vauxhall for about 20 years, so I know what they mean. There's not much here, that is true. And if you do come here and get bored, the one good thing is it's a very well connected in terms of transport, so it's very easy to get out very quickly. By bus, by train, by rail, walk, by boat even. There's a Thames Clipper service. There are many ways to escape from Vauxhall, so do not worry. But I have to say, if you dig a little deeper, there are some really interesting pockets of history in this area. And I'm just beginning to discover it. And the more I read, the more I dig, the more fascinating, the more intriguing, the more surprising it is. It's a real hidden gem in many ways, but you do have to look for it because it's not, a lot of it has been rebuilt, so only traces of that history remain. I have done a video on the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, so this is the second in that series into the history of Vauxhall, and today's turn is Vauxhall Bridge. It's the first iron bridge across the Thames. It's the first to carry a tram line, and it was also the first to introduce a bus lane. So quite a few firsts. And at one point as well, I think they used to charge to cross it. And what you're seeing now is the third iteration of it. I think the first one was built in sometime in the 17 or 1800s, and then a second and a third. And it has 5 spans. I think the second version of it had about 9, which caused a lot of problems. And today we're going to talk about actually the statutes. You can see some of them, a few of them from here. There's some really interesting Bronze Age or bronze statues. You can see one of them here if I zoom. It's the one representing pottery. And each one represents aspects or trades or industry that were prominent in this area. And the main categories are agriculture, architecture, engineering, industry, and education. And there's a dedicated statue for each one. And there's one for law as well, actually, local government. So that's what I'll be covering today. So there's the first statue I mentioned from the other side. It's the lady holding the pot, representing the pottery industry. And you really can't appreciate it until you're on the bridge. This is as close as I can get. And I believe they were made around by some Victorian era people. They may have been transported. In fact, I think they were moved to this area from somewhere else. Some people speculate that they may have been taken from some church somewhere. It's lots of versions of their history. But there's the first one. There's the Thames Clipper service. And there's the second one, and this guy is holding some kind of engine representing industry, ironworks. There was a Vauxhall ironworks around here at some point. And this is the first, as I said, bridge across the Thames made from iron. So second statue representing industry. and engineering. And this one is possibly the most interesting one because the lady is holding up a model of St. Paul's Cathedral. So she represents architecture, and if you stand in the middle of this bridge facing eastwards on a clear day, you can see the dome, the top of the dome of St. Paul's. But we're not facing that way, we're facing west. This statue is actually facing west towards Battersea, so it would have been better the other way. But anyway, just look at that. I wish I could position better, but this is as close as I can get. Look at that. And in her right hand she's holding a compass. So there it is, a miniature model of St. Paul's Cathedral. And this is the statue representing agriculture. It's a guy holding some wheat in his right arm, and you can't see it from this side, but on the left he's holding a scythe. So this is the statue for representing agriculture. And this is the last statue facing west. So west towards St. George Wharf, St. George Tower, towards Battersea Park. So I've made it to the other side, the Pimlico side, and you can see the view of the bridge from this side. It's quite colourful, I think. And you can really see the details of all the ironworks. But I'll zoom in on the last statue I covered because that's the only one I can zoom into clearly. And this is the agriculture guy holding some wheat. But yeah, the zooming won't work on the others. But I will jump to the other side shortly. But just so you can see it from this side, I'm on the Pimlico side. And there's the St. George Wharf and all the towers. I think that's the top of the Damac Tower that we can see there. And then Park Hyatt and the one next to it. And then St. George Wharf Tower. That's the one that was hit by a helicopter in 2013, February, from what I remember. And continues. That's the American Embassy over there, which opened officially in January 2018. And carries all the way towards Battersea. We are now on the side facing east, and the closest bronze statue is I can't quite tell from here. I would need to get closer. So let's head over to the bridge. And on the other side is MI6. So this one, now I recognize it from my research, is the one representing local government. It's a lady holding some kind of book and pointing. That's all I can see from this angle. But I read somewhere that this is the only statue dedicated to local government in London. And I think this person was saying that it holds some significance and should be moved somewhere else. But anyway, this is the first statue on this side, and it's the one representing local government. And this one is a lady holding a child, actually two children, I think. I will go on the other side as well. And also a book. And this one represents education. we will go to the other side to see the other child. So here's the same statue from the other side, and you can see the other, what looks like a boy that she's holding. Can't quite see the book, but this is the second one on the other side. Education. And this one represents art, and it's a woman holding a figurine in her left hand, and in her right hand, and in her left is a bunch of flowers and an artist's palette. And we will go to the other side as well for a different view. And here she is, and you can see her face in the little figurine a bit more clearly. There's a little bit of damage I can see to the statue, but overall in excellent condition. And this is the last of the statues that we're covering, and it represents science. And I think it's a woman. I'm not quite sure, but it's anyway, the person is holding a globe. So hopefully you can see it. I'll show it from the other side as well. You can just about see the head when you're crossing the bridge, but you really have to go down, to look down and strain to take a good look. But there is another vantage point, which I will also try for a better look. There's the globe. And here is the representation of science from the other side. I can't quite work out what the markings are on the sphere, but there it is. You can actually see the science statue much better from where I'm standing now. There it is. As I said before, these are huge, 2 ton each, 2 life sizes, twice life size. And I can't help but imagine how magnificent they would be if they were actually standing on the bridge instead of alongside, kind of hidden from view. If they were somehow placed more prominently to stand above the bridge, it would be magnificent. It would just be incredible. Maybe one day that would be possible. I would love to see that, but there's better use of money, funds, than doing that, so maybe not. But here we are. So that's the short summary of each of the statues that are kind of hidden from view on Vauxhall Bridge. I'll get back to the other side and say a bit more about this bridge. And by the way, this space where I was standing to film the science statue is a new public space that's just opened about a month ago to the public. So I wouldn't have been able to stand there without this. And it was built as part of the Thames Tideaway project. And there's 2 of these built, and this one is called the Isle of Ephra. And I will talk about this separately, but Ephra has a significance. It's a channel or a tributary that used to flow into the Thames. It's no longer here, but that's why they've called it Ephra. So that's it for today. There's a lot more that can be said about this bridge. I believe actually the very first crossing across the Thames was somewhere around here. It's not exactly this bridge, but it's somewhere around here. There's been some archaeologists who've done some digs to look into it. It's definitely somewhere around here. It wasn't really a bridge. It was more of like a causeway that you could cross at low tide. There was also some structure, either posts or piles, that reached across into the middle. There used to be some kind of island, some gravel and sand island, because the Thames used to be a lot wider than it is, much wider. This whole area used to be a marshland with reeds and those types of plants growing. So there was some dig led by the most recent, actually was on the Discovery Channel, by Tony, that guy from Time Team. I might link to that documentary. It's really interesting. So they did discover some, it may have been Bronze Age, it may have been even Stone Age, the structure that they uncovered. So there's that history. And also this bridge has a connection to the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, because actually initially it was called the Regent's Bridge, because it was commissioned by the Prince Regent, because he was one of many gentry and high society who used to love hanging out in the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens back in the 17th and 18th century, because that was the place to be. And at the time, there weren't that many crossings across London. These men called watermen, would ferry people up and down the river to bring them down to the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, which was a place of masquerade balls and festivals and promenades and walkways. It was a huge site. What remains now is it's a fraction of what it was then, because it's been built over with and it's even featured in films like Bridgerton. Was that a film or a series? Anyway, it wasn't Bridgerton. I'll link to that part as well. So apparently one of the reasons this bridge was built was because the Prince Regent wanted an easier way to get to Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens. So that's another aspect of this bridge. Anyway, there's a lot more to it than I can cover in this video. I don't want it to be too long. I hope you enjoyed it. I normally talk about balcony farming, but this is also my local area. I'm in Vauxhall, so I like to talk about local history now and again. So I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe for more. Thank you for watching. Bye.